with Luke, who works at Funkhouse, and with Evan Sobkowitz, who works out at Twitter now. And over the course of the year, there's been a lot of talk at the Chamber about how we can help get the business community integrated and knowledgeable about this new program that BOCES, which is the Local Board of Cooperative Education Services, their new P-TECH Academy that they've been granted from the state. So it's essentially creating a new high school focused on creating two pathways to technology, hence the P-TECH, one in advanced manufacturing and one also in computer science. And we are looking to let the community know about all of the details behind it. I serve on the curriculum committee, but Barry's really in the leadership and can explain much more about it. So Barry Durfel, I'll hand it off to you. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So thanks for asking me to be here. So it's a kind of a small world, right? Because as Dominic and I got to know each other more, I realized that my son actually had gone to school and graduated maybe the year that he was a freshman. So just kind of a small world. So Diane Hessler is actually the director of the P-TECH program at TST BOCES, but my role is to facilitate the curriculum council. And that's how Dominic and I started to kind of work together on this. So I'll tell you a little bit about what this is. And it's a pretty simple slide presentation, but there are a few hyperlinks. So the first question would be, why P-TECH? So P-TECH stands for Pathways in Technology Early College. But the big why is because, so I'm a longtime educator. I've been in education for 30 years. Because school really needs to be different. Because so many young people spend so much time every day in school waiting to get out of school so they can learn. And waiting to get out of school so that they can do all the things that really matter to them. And that's not to say that the people who are teaching or the people who are administrating don't have good ideas and don't have good intent, but it's just not working. That's my own perspective. But I think it's a perspective shared by a lot of folks, and that's where the impetus came from to try to create something different, a different kind of model. So in a minute, I'll get to the sort of what is P-TECH and how does it maybe relate to some of the work that you all do. But first, P-TECH starts with who it is. So it's the students. It's the young people who are going to be coming into this program. Starting in September, 20 students will be there, and then each year over the next 6 years, another 20 will be coming into the program. So that in the course of 6 years, it will be a school of 120 young people. Their families are stakeholders in this too, because they are essentially taking a risk of suggesting, my child ought to go to this school rather than the school that my child would typically go to in my community. So they have a real stake in this being an experience that's worthwhile for the young people. There are business partners that we're officially already working with, and so they're also stakeholders in this, because P-TECH Academy is essentially, it's a 6-year program. So students come in 9th grade, and then when they graduate, they'll have a high school diploma as well as an associate's degree in either advanced manufacturing or computer science. And the idea is that working with business partners, we will build curriculum that actually helps the young people learn just what they need to learn to really come and apply for that position, whoever was the guy who said, we're always hiring, right? So what can we do to prepare young people to really get real jobs in this community if that's what they want to do? So the business partners are key stakeholders. Higher education is a key stakeholder. Right now, TC3 is our main partner in this project. The broader community is a stakeholder, because really these are young people from the whole BOCES region. So from Groton, Candor, Newfield, Lansing, South Seneca, Trumansburg, Ithaca, Dryden, I think I got them all. So young people from all of those communities are part of this program. So really, the broader community has a stake in TST PTAC. Of course, the educators who work there, but also the educators in the region, because part of our thinking is that as this school develops, my main job at BOCES, I'm an assistant superintendent for instruction. So I've got a team that does professional development work with educators throughout the whole region, teachers and administrators. So part of our hope is that this will become kind of a laboratory school where if people want to do professional development, let's say they want to learn how to more effectively integrate technology into day-to-day classroom practice in ways that are relevant to young people, well, they can come and learn some stuff from us, but won't it be awesome to then, let's go into PTAC and see how people are actually doing this, and then let's come back and debrief a little bit so that when you want to go back and try it in the classroom, you've got a little bit of a context. So we're hoping that, so like on that basic level, educators are stakeholders, but I think also, as you'll see on the next slide when I share a little bit more, we're really going to be pushing the bounds of what school could look like. And so the educators in the region will benefit from seeing other possibilities. And then, of course, the school districts as well, for the same kind of reason. In order for students to be eligible to participate, there are some characteristics that they have to have some of these in order to be considered. They don't have to have all of them. But if they're a first year or a first generation person going to college in their family, if they do not have economic security, so they qualify for free and reduced lunch, if they did not score proficiently on the 7th grade math or ELA exam, if they are from a historically marginalized group, and so that would include, could include kids of color, LGBTQ kids, but it can also include, in this case, in terms of gender, people who either identify as gender fluid, transgender, or as female, because within technology fields in general, there's underrepresentation of women. So that's kind of why, because school needs to be relevant, and it's not quite working the way it is right now. I mean, y'all went to school, so maybe that's a shock to you, but I'm guessing that maybe it's not a shock to you. I went to school as well. And it's really, the stakeholders are all of us, right? So, one way to answer that question, what is PTAC, and this slideshow I've shared so that you all will have access to it in the future. I mean, you can go to a web page and you can see a little bit about what is PTAC. So what does it look like? As I explained, it's a 6-year program, and young people will graduate with the different degrees. But significantly, they're going to have individualized pathways to complete what they're doing. They're going to have intensive workplace experiences. We're working to create inclusive, culturally sustaining, and relevant curriculum. So in other words, we're working to create learning opportunities that are not only project-based and real-world centered, but that anyone can access this, given all the different possible identities that people will bring to the work. So if people have disabilities, we're making sure that it's inclusive so that folks with different disabilities can access it, but also so people can access it. What we mean here by culturally sustaining and relevant is, so I can see myself in the curriculum, and I can see myself in the curriculum in ways that make me proud of who I am, who my family is, what our history is. And I would suggest that that's a little bit different than typical school. As a teacher for a long time, it took me a while to learn that I needed to teach young people in 7th grade about enslavement, not slavery, so that they understood from the beginning that it was a system that was done. It didn't happen by magic. And to teach about enslaved people rather than slaves because they were human first. So if you take that most basic concept and just extrapolate it, that's the kind of curriculum that we're working on creating. So this page gives you a little bit of an insight into sort of what P-TECH looks like. But I think another way to get some insight is to take a little bit of a look of who's part of our curriculum council. So we've been explicit in going out to find people who represent as many different intersecting identities as we could, so that when we're building curriculum with the students and the teacher, we've got multiple perspectives in the room from the beginning. So you can see that we've got people on our council who represent organizations like TCAD. We've got people who represent schools. We've got people who represent groups or nonprofits like Civic Ensemble, for example, or Science Center. We've got students. We've got business partners. So we've got kind of a variety of people. And this continues to grow all the time, with the idea being the more perspectives we get in the room, the better we're going to be able to create a school that really works for everybody. And that means it works for the students while they're there. It works for our community in that what the students are working on, the problems that they're working on, the projects are community-based projects that actually can improve the quality of our life here in our community. And it works for the businesses that are looking to be able to hire people when they come out that are actually ready to do the jobs. So that's another way to sort of get a little glimpse of what P-TECH is. An additional way is to just show you, well, this is our purpose and our charge. So the Curriculum Council is here to provide guidance and insight. So we need to make sure that we develop curriculum that's standards aligned, right? Because if we want the kids to graduate with a diploma, we got to make sure that we're aligning what we're doing to standards. That's not hard to do, despite a lot of what you might hear, I think, publicly. But you just have to do it. You have to know the standards well. But also guidance and insight to make sure that the curriculum's aligned to the TC3 pathways and also to the industries in the region. What is it that you actually want people to learn and be able to do so that when they apply for a position, you'll be excited to want to hire them? So that's kind of our purpose, and our charge is really to leverage the expertise of everybody on our council to make that happen. And I'll give you a little bit of detail as to, so it's not quite maybe as abstract as it might be at the moment. So you mind if I just open 500 tabs? Is that all right? It doesn't, you don't care? All right. So I start with this because to me, this is part of what makes us unique. Unique compared to the other P-TECHs in the state, but also just unique in terms of schools. So when our curriculum council met with business partners, my job was to get business partners to tell me all the technical skills that they needed in order to hire people. And they said, don't waste your time with the technical skills. Here's what we really need. And I was really happy about that, actually, because it really aligned with my own perspectives as well. So there's kind of three categories that the state thinks about. They think about personal traits, group experience, and problem solving. But this list is the list that the business partners, the students, and the other council members came up with. That when our students graduate from this program, these are the skills, these are the qualities that we want them to have. And if you look at these, my hope would be that you would say, wow, people who are able to both agree and disagree, interact with others in ways that are healthy and productive, accept non-closure, the idea that problems aren't necessarily permanently solved. Our hope would be that you would look at that list and say, yeah, that is actually not only the kind of folk that we'd like to hire in our business, But wouldn't it be great if we were graduating young people in our communities who had these kind of skills and were able to really do these? So to me, that is probably the most exciting aspect of this. Now, yeah, there's a lot. There's like 60, but it's a 6-year program. So the idea is, and it's a spiraling curriculum, and they're all kind of related to each other. But from the beginning, this is explicitly what we're working on. We're working on content, so math, science, ELA, social studies, languages, etc., the arts, but we're also working on this at the same time through integrated projects that either business partners or organizations in the community share with us as projects that they would love to have some people put their eyes on and try to tackle, or projects that the students kind of develop based on who they are and who their families are and kind of what matters in their lives and in their communities. So there's also a skills map that we created. So this is what I had to get this done for the state, but I couldn't get this done until the group really got that other stuff out and on the table, which I really valued. And because of that, it became easy to do this next one. So this, let me just see if I can raise it up a little bit so you can see the bottom. How do you get to this last little part? So at the bottom of the screen, there are these titles for all these different kind of jobs. But you can't quite see them. But yeah, because they're down low. But I'll sort of let you know. So what this is, giant spreadsheet, and down across the bottom is a different tab. And these are actually job titles that people who are partners on the Curriculum Council said, well, if we're looking for application analysts, these are kind of the tasks that those kind of people do. This is the area of broad expertise that those folks have. And these are some of the specific skills or technical skills that they would need. So this list includes an application analyst, an application developer, a CNC operator, customer service, develop ops engineer, front-end developer. So we've got a full stack engineer. So there's basically this whole list of possible jobs that either right now folks have said to us we're looking to hire, or we can tell you 6 years from now we know we're going to need people like that. So the other piece, so there's the New York State standards that the kids will be learning. There's those other qualities that I showed you a moment ago that they'll be learning. And then they'll be also working towards being able to do what it says in the skills map. And they'll be shadowing people at jobs, and then eventually mentoring with people in jobs, and maybe eventually even apprenticing with people in jobs as they progress through their years. And technology, let me just see. There's one last thing I guess I can show you. We'll see how well this one shows up. It's a little on the large side, but just to give you a little sense. So like part of the work has just been mapping out over the course of 6 years, what are the courses that students will be taking. And just to give you a little sense of what that looks like, we're kind of taking this approach that like in the first year, ELA and social studies and technology will be an integrated class. So they won't go like to 3 different periods. But they'll be learning in this course combined introduction to humanities, identity, community, and social justice. Who am I? Who are we? And what can we do together for the betterment of our community? And then the idea would be over each year in high school, they move from an introductory level the first year to a general level the second year, to an advanced level the third year, and what we would call the capstone the fourth year. So they'll just keep getting deeper and deeper into making sense of what this means. The humanities and identity, community, and social justice. And in that course, they'll learn global studies, and then they'll learn U.S. history, and then they'll learn economics, and they'll learn participation in government. Similarly with math, science, and engineering. So the idea is combined courses, they're not going to be bells and periods and that. And work will kind of follow like project cycles. So they may be working on a project that's like 3.5 to 4 weeks long. So for 3.5 to 4 weeks, that's what they're all working on. Teachers are working together. It's not like the teachers are working separately in their own content areas, et cetera. So, and technology is integrated throughout. Certainly by the time they get up to their 5th and 6th year, when they're at TC3, yeah, see this spreadsheet's so hard, it's even so large, it's hard to find stuff. But, you know, essentially, by the time they're to their 5th or 6th year, they'll be taking kind of technology-specific courses related to these pathways. But what we all know, meaning that my team that's helping to put this together about technology, is it's integrated into everything we do. So it's not like there needs to be a special course on it. The idea will be that it will be integrated throughout. So that, in a nutshell, is what TST P-Tech is. And I don't know if you have questions that I could try to illuminate anything for you, or thoughts or feedback.
Yeah.
Sure.
Loved if you could just talk a little bit about, you know, as like sort of the tech community of Ithaca, and how like, you know, what involvement we have. And
Sure.
I think that you had mentioned something about mentorship programs.
Sure.
and
So, of course, my ideas are changing because I got a bunch of great articles from Dominic that made me shift my thinking. But some of my early thinking, right, 2 months ago, like on the most basic level, you can think about where advanced manufacturing and computer science come together. Sure, it could be like Alexa in the home, or it could be the self-parking car. So someone's got to be designing the technology, both the inside, you know, coding type technology, but also manufacturing the physical components to make it all come together. So we know that our students are going to be learning how to do that. And then the more I've read, the more I've realized other layers to that are, on the most basic level, well, if that self-parking car hits the car in front of it, who's liable, the driver or the manufacturer? So there's an ethics perspective to this. There's a legal perspective. Then from a whole other realm, just speaking for my kids and my own family, right, through our conversations, well, what if we could design, because now that machine vision is getting better and better, maybe law enforcement could wear things so that with machine vision and some kind of a speaking device or whatever, so it says, that's not a gun in the suspect's hand, it's a phone. So what are the implications for bringing together both technology, but also the humanities, let's say, to solve real-world problems like making policing safer for everyone? So I know that much. I know that that's the realm of possibility, and I think part of what will make this work is if the teachers, so keep in mind, it's 20 students the first year, so it's a really mellow way to start, because we'll have a couple teachers, a principal, a school counselor. We're not going to have a lot of staff at the beginning. But what will make it work is if the staff and the students can genuinely be interacting with folks like yourselves who are really working in all different aspects of technology. Really, for them, understanding what are the real issues that you're wrestling with, what really matters, what doesn't matter, what do you not need to waste your time on, kind of thing. So whatever kind of, formal to informal partnerships we could make. So it could be as simple as, hey, maybe the kids from P-Tech want to come down and visit us. Or hey, maybe we want to go up and spend a little time at P-Tech and just see what it's all about. And not only see what it's all about, give some constructive critical feedback. hey, they're not sitting in rows, but they're still listening to you talk a lot, whatever it is. So I think building some relationships like that would be really useful. I guess for me as well, knowing, would there be a way for us periodically to share, hey, here's what's going on at PTech, that maybe could be shared out, and then folks could say, I want to explore that a little bit more. Maybe we could have a couple young people come down and shadow us, whatever. I think any of those possibilities we would really value quite a bit. We're going into this with a lot of humility, knowing that to ask the community and to ask business folks to partner with us, what do we have to give you in return? We're not sure. But we suspect that together maybe we can do good things for the community. But, I'll speak for myself. I know that there's a whole lot we don't know about how to really make education relevant. And whatever you can do to help us with that, we would certainly appreciate. Whatever we can do to help you, we would like to be able to do that, to serve in whatever way we could. So that's how I'd answer that. Sure. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One is given that 6 years is a long time.
Yeah.
And basically, people have to know that they want to follow this, essentially in middle school. I know, like, senior, high school students and even college students that don't know what they want to do.
Yeah.
And how do you plan to address that?
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest challenge we have right now. And I guess the way I'm looking at it, I don't know. So on one level, the students and their families are really putting their trust in us, that we're going to do work with their young people and make it meaningful enough and genuine enough that it's worth the 6 years that they're putting into it. I think emphasizing that it's not just about getting a degree in computer science or just about getting a high school diploma, but it's about learning in a whole new way and building a school community, because they're also leaving their schools, right? So if I used to go to school in Trumansburg, I spend all my time now at PTech. So I think what we're trying to do is offer them the chance to build a community together and to get the benefits of that. If it doesn't work out, so 3 years into it, that's one of the issues that PTechs who've come before us have started to figure out. How do we transition that student back to their home school? How do we so part of that scope and sequence work is all around making sure that if that happens, students can still graduate from high school. Mm.
Resources to provide these kinds, and so there is a huge gap in terms of what, when you get to high school, what is available to the Pittsburgh high school students as opposed to this group. And this could be a leveling, thinking of that, but this would be
Yeah.
folks coming from like Newfield or
Yeah, I mean, we'll give them absolutely. And part of what I like about the fact that in order to get into this program from now, you have to have qualities that typically schools are not successful meeting those people's needs. As a longtime educator, to me, it has nothing to do with the kids. It has to do with us, learning how to meet everybody's needs. If we can do this work well with that group of people, I think the benefit back to a Trumansburg or any other school is, wow, if you can be successful with these kids, maybe we could learn some things. I mean, in my ideal world, this would rub off on all the schools in the region too, and there'd be, lots of versions of project-based, culturally relevant, affirming learning happening in more and more schools. So yeah, you're right though, the 6-year piece, it's a huge deal, and You know, I certainly didn't know in 8th grade what I wanted to do, for sure, or when I graduated college. Well, any other questions for folks? Sure.
I'm just curious, those job descriptions that you had,
Yeah.
are students picking one of those specifically to focus on by the end of the?
Well, by the end of, so the idea is that by the end of 10th grade, they should be picking which of the 3 specific TC3 pathways seems to make the most sense for them. So,
Is it the machining?
well, the actual pathways in the TC3 is computer support specialist, advanced manufacturing, and there's one other within the computer science realm. And they may be creating a cybersecurity one. And then I think the idea is that at a certain point, around 10th grade or so the first year, the idea is lots of career exploration. Learn a little bit about all different kinds of careers, go spend, a day here, a day there. And then by the end of 10th grade, kind of start to narrow down, or what do I think are some things I'm interested in? And then maybe I can do a mentorship at a business that has that position in it. And if I like it, continue on to an apprenticeship. We want to give them enough exposure so that they get a real sense for what is it. But we don't want to lock them in, so now you're stuck with this for life, because on Tuesday, that's what you said you wanted to do, So it's going to be a little bit of both, but that's the idea, yeah.
It's early compared to, if you're going to high school and then going to college, and then if
Right.
you're in college trying to decide.
Yeah. So I think, by 11th, 12th grade, it will be great if lots of the students feel like that's my passion, I want to do an apprenticeship and really, get into it. But there's got to be room for the students who just haven't quite found the niche. And the other thing is, so that list of jobs and all that, that's an ongoing work in progress. And the state's been really clear in acknowledging that they understand things are changing all the time. There's going to be a whole bunch of jobs on there in 2 years that are not there right now. So we'll have to adjust as well. So thanks.
Well, yeah, I think that we'll get this. If you said that these slides will be public, we'll get that.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's super low-key slides, but it gives you links to what you need to see, I think.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
is your information in there if anyone has any?
I will I'll put my information on the bottom of the slide so you guys know how to get in touch with me.
Perfect.
Sound all right?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, everyone. As usual, I think we're going to take a quick 10-minute break, so get some food, some pizza, and then we're going to hear from Jay about product prioritization. So we'll be back.
I think I'm on mic now. Okay. Let's get this going. All right. This is pretty much as good as this presentation is going to get. I don't know if you've played the game. I don't know if you played the game Pitfall or used balsamic mockups, but this combines the two of them. This is Pitfall done in balsamic mockups. That's all I got. All right. Okay, I should introduce who I am. I work with a company called GiveGab. I'm one of the co-founders, VP of Product, and I manage the engineering team manager, but right now I'm actually transitioning out of that role, which I'll explain a little bit later. I've been with the company for almost 7 years now. Built a lot of different products. Like we've done like multiple SaaS offerings. Like done some enterprisey things. We built an iOS app that is totally irrelevant to our business model right now, and I need to retire that. We have this thing that's done really well, which is our Giving Day apps, which are basically like these kind of. We just had one on last Friday. Giving is Gorgeous. So it's just basically like an app that's dedicated to like a region or a school. We do Cornell's Giving Day, various things like that. So those have actually been really successful for us. Done various enterprisey things, and we even delved into a mobile site, not mobile responsive, but the old school like 2012 mobile sites. That was a dark period, just building everything all over again, but worse. So yeah, I went through a lot of ups and downs with the team. We did a pivot or two over the course of all these years, and I've made a lot of mistakes. Like, it happens. Like when you're working and you're in software, you're making a bunch of decisions, and you don't have a lot of information all the time, so you're going to screw up, or you're going to like maybe think something is wrong, and not really step in to stop it, and it's going to blow up, and that's also kind of your mistake as well. Like if you had a chance to be like, oh, I could intervene here and like, let's get this thing under control. If you let that go, I mean, I've done that too. So I don't know. I'm here to talk about a little bit of a few of those and a little bit about product prioritization. And I'm super excited to be here. I've always wanted to do this. I never thought I was really qualified to do this. I always felt like I should be talking about I needed to talk about some like obscure like JavaScript framework, or I don't know, like a different, like the latest database or what. But anyway, I'm excited to be here. I thought things would be a little different. Right now I'm kind of in the process of selling my home, ditching a bunch of things, leaving my job, and my wife and I are moving into an Airstream trailer and kind of just living on the road. So instead of really focusing on this presentation, I did many other things instead. I focused on discarding items from my life. Thought a lot about yard sale marketing and advertising in Ithaca. A lot of stuff about solar panels on RVs. A lot of things about getting internet on the road and traveling. That's big. And then this knife usage, chef or Santoku knives. I know a lot of people are into chef knives. I also made this terrible slide to make an excuse for how bad this presentation might turn out. So I'm also up for talking to any of these topics afterwards, if anyone's interested, except for the knife one, because I've been on forums discussing knives, and it gets real weird. Okay. All right, so why is priority important? I thought I spelled important wrong. So priority is extremely important because like there's like so much you can work on. You could build like anything if you have enough time and resources. But when you start walking down a path and you're trying to build something out, you might get down the road a ways, and all of a sudden like you're like, holy crap, this is a terrible mistake, but we just spent 8 weeks building out this feature. We're nowhere near complete. Nobody wants it. People want us to fix this other thing, but we have to either keep marching through and fix it off, like finish it off, and hopefully it takes off, or just drop it completely, and then that's all wasted work. So, it ends up, if you're not prioritizing things right and not making the right decisions, it costs a lot of money and time. And so I want to talk a little bit about like things to look out for. So I titled this thing product prioritization, principles, and pitfalls. So I just chose like 6 not random, but 6 things to look out for when you're prioritizing things, and then maybe things to avoid. So I don't know how to explain this. So let's just go through this. I hope this is applicable. I know everyone has different sorts of roles here, different jobs, but hopefully this helps understand how to like synthesize information and make decisions. So let's start off with the positive things, some principles. All right, so having a product vision, and this is always a little difficult, but you have to understand like where you're going, and you know what are you building, and what is it going to look like 6 months from now, even 6 weeks from now, 2 years, 5 years. This is a thing that's going to really help you inform all of your like small decisions. Like so, it's going to be your like waypoint, but it's going to lead you up into all like the strategic decisions you make along the way, but it's also going to help guide what you discuss with your customers. So, it's a little different. It's a little difficult to start at first because you start off with a lot of assumptions. Like you have this great idea. You're like, we want to build this cool product, but you got to get out there and like talk to some customers who could help direct your product vision. And they're going to set that. But as you know more and more, like say you have a product and you're 2 months into it, your discussions might be different. Your vision might be different. It's going to get a lot more solid over time. Like basically as you become, I mean, you have to constantly be reevaluating things. But when you get to a certain point, you're like, well, we know where we're going. So let's try to make sure we're not making mistakes along the way versus we don't really know where we're going. Let's just get enough information to help us decide some sort of waypoint. So it's going to change over time. Some things early on to really think about, like, there are different ways to think about, like if you're just starting off, if you want to build an app and you want to build like an MVP, there are different ways you could do this. Like if you're building something that's totally, out of the box, like, or you're kind of jumping into a market that exists already, there's a certain feature set that you could probably tear apart and say like this might be my MVP. And you could say like, if I had this, and this, it would work for me and it would work for 80% of the customers and we could at least prove this thing out. But you could also jump into a market where you're building something totally new and like people aren't expecting it. And that's definitely the more exciting thing. So that you're going to have to do a lot more research and your vision is going to be kind of wild and not as transferable to other human beings. You can't just be like, we're the LinkedIn for, I don't know, frog babysitters. That was the worst analogy I could have come up with there. But so it's a little more obscure, like to kind of define it. So I think I've got product vision. I think I talked about that enough, and I'm done rambling on about that subject. So like I said, constantly reevaluate this, and like once you have something down, and try to prove yourself wrong. All right, so another huge part is just listening, and I thought about doing this entire presentation just on listening alone, because that's just, it's a constantly evolving process as well as your product vision, and it totally informs your product vision. Like it's a very important process of, making decisions, learning more, learning what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, what you should do more of, what you should do less of. So the goal is like to just put different processes in place to listen to your customers in just multiple ways. You're trying to get as much information as possible and like synthesize it into something that makes sense. And early on, that might just be having coffee with somebody and sitting down with them and talking to them about their problems, or maybe just doing a sketch and saying, does this make sense to you? Or is this your mental model of this problem? So it could start off like that. And it can move all the way to something much more complex, which you're taking like, database queries and something like Localytics or Mixpanel and like looking at like quantitative analytics, as well as like combining that with, customer interviews and sales calls. And so like, it's going to mature over time, and then like those early techniques, unless you have like a lot of product people or a lot of people doing interviews, they're going to become less and less sustainable. It's tough to have like coffee with 100 people a week. That's going to get a little bit out of control, and you're never going to be able to carry out their wishes. But early on, those sort of things are going to be just amazing. And to kind of have those touch points as often as possible. Like in GiveGab, we still do some customer interviews. We've done some focus groups when we're building out new bits of information, but we get a ton of information from our customer support team, our customer success team, or our customer champions, or what are they called now? Customer champions? Success champions? Customer success champions. But I have this. This is a greater than symbol. Chat support is greater than email support. So if you have the means to put, like, it depends what your product is, but if you have like the means to put a chat support in place and have somebody that could field questions in real time, you will get way better feedback than lobbing emails back and forth overnight. So like if you could get something like that in place early, like it's going to change the way you build a product, because you, even as a product manager or even an engineer, could jump in there and have a conversation with a customer who's struggling at the moment. There's this cool thing called Full Story. I don't know if anyone's played with that. It's a neat product. You can basically spy on your customers and see what they're clicking on and see what kind of errors they're running into. Obviously, user testing, NPS score is a good way. Net Promoter Score, it's just a quick, like you've seen them before. It's like a 1 to 10 scale, like how likely are you to recommend this product. But if you're getting a bunch of ones, you can reach out to those people and see exactly what might be going on. Sitting in on sales calls is also good, because people tell you, when they're looking to buy your product, they will tell you exactly what's wrong with it and why they're not going to buy it. So it's always a good thing. And also talking to customers that are leaving you is fantastic. It's not fantastic, but it's a fantastic way of getting information that is, why things went south. All right. I struggle with the punctuation on this title. Why, not what? I'm not sure if there should be a comma in there. Let's just go with it. You really have to get down to what the customer is asking for, but the nuts and bolts of it, like the base of it, like they're going to ask for this obscure feature. It's going to be so specific. They're going to be like, I want this to do exactly this thing, like on Facebook, and it's going to come up and it's going to ask the people this question, and then they're going to answer it, and their smiley face is going to come up, and then we're going to send them an email, and then we're going to tweet at them. And you're like, okay, well, why do you need that? Like, what are you going to get out of this thing? And they're like, well, no, we just want it. And so, like, you have to be like, why do you want this thing? Like, what's the ultimate goal? Is it like, are you looking to just recognize the person that's writing into you in like a special way? Like, maybe there's a way to find out, like, if you get enough of these requests and get at the why, you could come up with a really clever way. If the request is we want to give like amazing feedback to customers that are signing up for our email list, you can build something that serves like 80% of your customers' needs without being so quirky and specific that, maybe it's this Civil War reenactment listserv, and they want like a cannon firing when the button is submitted. And you don't really want to deal with that, but maybe you could just come up with something that's cute and fun, like a rabbit, or I don't know what it would be. Okay, so all right, so getting at the why, not the what, and then this is a really good one too. Just understanding effort versus impact. So like, I probably should have labeled things better, because like I should have said high impact and like high effort and low effort, but the labels don't really match up with everything, but we're going to go with this. So this is a really good way to look at a piece of work when it comes in. Like, how difficult is something, and what kind of impact is it going to have on my users? Like, is it going to change like 80% of their lives? Are they going to get this thing and be like, oh my God, this solves my problems. I could reset my password with ease now, or whatever their problem that they're constantly running into is. You probably don't want to spend, well, resetting passwords is a pain. That's a chat support thing that we solved. It took a while. But anyway, so you're looking for things that are like low complexity and high value. And oftentimes not a lot of these exist. You're really like looking for things that might fit into that thing. And you're really trying to avoid these like this area down here where something's super complex and is low value. Like we're going to spend 3-4 weeks developing something and one customer is going to use it for one day. Like that's something you just want to avoid, because you're just going to sink a lot of time into that and you're going to be ignoring like all of these great things, and all the customers that you can just please. Like if you could just make them happy with some simple changes, that's great. Another temptation, though, on this chart is sometimes to go for low complexity and low value, because you could crank these things out. And that's good from here, like, you know, from time to time. Like sometimes you just need to fill in like an iteration, or like, you know, you're just looking to get some things done, and it's like, okay, well, what can we take on? It's like, you know, change the copy on that button. It's confusing people, and let's put some help text on this thing, and, you know, let's just rearrange these radio buttons and make this a little bit better. And, you know, maybe you're not delivering a lot of value, but you're just kind of filling up time and making the product like just a little bit better. But if you do enough of that, you're going to eat up a lot of your time. And so it's good to take those on, but you can't like fill up your entire velocity with those things, because it's just going to sink you. And another thing that's really dangerous is like this area up here is high complexity, high value things. If all your customers are asking for something, but it's really hard to do, and you think it's going to take like 3 weeks, you just have to suck it up sometimes and like do it, because otherwise you're going to end up like it's going to constantly get pushed back. It's going to sit like 4 weeks out on your roadmap or 6 weeks out on your roadmap forever, because all this shit's going to sink in, or worse, that's going to sink in. Hopefully some of this sinks in if something's going to push that stuff. But sometimes you just have to sit down and bite the bullet and take on that work, whether it be a huge refactoring or it's, you know, just a whole new app. I'm not really sure what you build, so I think any bit of software work could fit into one of these buckets. So please use something like this to evaluate things. It's also great for bugs. It's a really good way of evaluating bugs and how to fix them. Another good thing as far as prioritization goes is just grouping related work. I struggled with a name for this slide, but I think that makes sense. So just finding like just bits of work that make sense to take on together. You know, it allows you to basically gather information more thoroughly on this entire project. So if you're working on all these different bits of your application, and everyone's kind of got a different mindset going, there's a lot of difficulty in the team having a discussion about like, you know, what's right, what's wrong. You know, I think I'm doing this way. Oh, I should do it this way too, because these two things are very similar. Maybe we could share some UI here and there. So you know, to take work that's like related and put it together really helps keep the team focused, and helps you as like a product person that's like directing everything, helps you understand like, you know, how to collect information better and how to, what's the word for it? I don't know, make better decisions and focused decisions. Keeps you and your team focused. And like sometimes like you end up basically creating this domino effect where like one piece of work will unlock another piece of work, will unlock another piece of work. And it might just be like, oh, we want to work on this thing and we've been putting off this huge refactoring. If we do this refactoring and then follow it up with this thing here, this bit of like work, we can kill that refactoring work. It'll help us out in all these places, and it will also like help us move forward on these various things that the customers are asking for. It could also be something as simple as like you kick off this bit of work and you end up with like a new page on your site or a new part of your app, and it just gives you like another bit of UI that you can add a related bit of functionality that's maybe like, I don't want to talk points or anything, but like a very small, like a day's work, like this feature request that like you couldn't tack anywhere in your app before, but since you're working on this like bigger project, you could say, oh yeah, let's just slide this little thing right in place here, because this is what people have been asking for. We had nowhere to put it because it was out of the context of our app, but here it is now. So it's about like knowing those requests and knowing when you're taking on, say that like the thing in the upper left-hand quadrant that's really high value and you know, a lot of effort, to be able to be like, oh, let's slide 2 of these like low value, low effort things in there because, you know, 40% of our customers are asking for them, and get that out there because it all relates to one another. So yeah, grouping work is a really good way to think through how to take things on. And just know like your product prioritization will not be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. That's just inevitable. It's really hard to make these decisions. You have like limited information. You're going to get better at it over time, probably. You just have to like evaluate yourself constantly and sit down, have retrospectives with your teams, look through things. You know, if the decisions are maybe coming from elsewhere, you know, try to have discussions on like, hey, this thing that we're taking on isn't really that helpful for us, so we should do less of this if possible. All right, so let's jump into some pitfalls. Okay, just gonna get right into this. All right, so I don't want to like bash customers at all. Like, I don't really want to bash customers at all. They're an amazing part of your business, and you need customers. But there are certain customers that you will run into from time to time that really only really give a fuck about themselves. That's all they care about. They don't care about you unless you're doing something for them. And they're not going to take no for an answer. They're super, you know, upset about every little thing. And they're gonna ask for these really particular things, and they're gonna be like, your product isn't this. I want it to do this and that, and I want this to look like this and this to look like that. And you have to like manage these things. It's important though to like look at their information and be like, hey, are they saying something everyone else is saying? And if they are, maybe this is a good time to do it. Or are they just like really particular about this thing that really isn't gonna make a difference in their lives, or anyone's lives really for that matter. They just want control. So it's important to like recognize this customer. You do not want to pull like a emergency brake and like be like, let's work on everything that they want right now. And if you do that and you take it on, there's a really good chance that they're just going to find the next thing like 3 weeks down the road to get upset with you about. So that's just something to avoid. But don't confuse this with a blunt customer. Like a blunt customer might talk to you like they might talk down to you, but they might be spot on. They might be spot on with like 90% of your users, but they're just really honest with you. And so it's important not to like confuse this blunt customer with the entitled customer. The entitled customer just wants what they want. The blunt customer probably wants what all of your customers want, but you just have to get over your personal pride and your, you can't take it personally, like what they're saying about like your product or whatnot. They might be just complaining, but they really want your product to do something amazing, and so do all of your customers. So like that's something you need to just make a distinction on. And as far as the entitled customer goes, you know, I would love to say like walk away from them if at all possible. But it depends on a lot of things. It depends on the relationship. It depends on where you are in your business. It depends on what the market looks like. If they're the biggest player in the market, there's no way you can just like be like, I'm gone, like get out of here, we don't need you. So it really depends. But if you have a market where there's like tons of potential customers, you know, you might have to have that discussion to say like, you know, we're not a good fit right now, so I think we need to go our separate ways. A little bit different than the entitled customer is the long-term monogamous relationship. So like just spending way too much time with one single customer, you know, it's great. It's awesome that you have this relationship with a customer and you find somebody that's like, we want what you're selling. Like this could happen early on very easily. And you could jive with them and everything's great and everything you offer them is amazing. And they're like, oh, thanks, cool. Oh yeah, we should do this and this. So you're gonna walk down this path, this aisle with them, and you're gonna get to the end of it. If you're just focusing on them, you're gonna get to the end of this thing and you're gonna be like, okay, I got this thing that only one person wants and now we're stuck with each other and I'm just gonna build this for them forever. So this is something that could happen. So just early on, just be trying to talk to a lot of customers. And maybe it depends on your business model. Maybe this is great. Maybe you could figure out a way. Maybe your product maybe you just need one customer. So I'm not saying like, don't build for one customer. But if you're trying to build something for a lot, don't base it all off one customer because you're only going to build something for them. And another thing to be careful with this is like as you scale and start like paying attention to more and more customers, they might not be cool with taking a backseat to those customers. So you're going to have to give them less and less attention, and sometimes that's a that's an upsetting thing to them. So just manage those relationships early on. Like it's really hard with the earliest customers. Okay. Chasing and copying the competition. So like just trying to clone someone else's feature matrix is not going to make you win a market unless you really find an amazing way to like get new customers or grow, or if you're already some giant in one market and you just want to jump into another one. Because you're basically just chasing them and you're trying to catch them, and obviously they're probably going to have more resources than you and a head start. And unless you have something that's really, amazing, like if you have an amazing UI and like this like incredibly, like their tech stack is like so archaic that you can just like sneak up on them and like do things more efficiently and iterate faster and give all your customers a better experience, and they're kind of just frozen in their tracks because of what they've built basically and like how long they've been in it, you might catch them and you might surpass them, but it's a tough race and you got to wait for them to trip usually in order to catch them. So you just got to look for like ways to distinguish yourself in the market, and sometimes it's like outside of your product, which I'll talk a little bit about that later. I call this one feature fires. It's this kind of analogy I have, whereas if every time you build like a new feature, it's like you're starting this fire, and like you have to maintain these fires, otherwise they're going to go out, or they're at least going to burn at a steady state and eventually go out. So if you're just constantly adding like features in some sort of feature matrix race, you're going to end up with this like really like wide but shallow product that does like a lot of things, but none of them particularly well. So like I imagine, like if we had all these fires in this room, whatever your latest thing is, where most of your customers are, you'll probably have like 30 people in the room over there surrounding that thing, but you're still going to have like 2 people hanging out over in the corner here, like warming themselves on that fire. And if you're not keeping it warm enough for them, they're going to write in, they're going to complain, they're eventually going to get upset and leave, and they might bash you to other potential customers because they had a bad experience with this feature that really isn't part of your business plan anymore, when in reality they should have been chilling out by the other fire because that's what you're really like stoking, and that's like really what you're catering to these days. So like sometimes it's really hard. I'll go into the next file, I'll talk about this a little bit more, but that sort of maintaining the fires is really difficult, and so like also building like a bunch of add-ons and like a bunch of different features raises the expectations, and you might not be able to like meet those expectations if people start working on things. Like if you add something like a news feed, people are going to be like, well, it's not Facebook's news feed, or so things are going to like really like raise expectations. So like you add an inbox, people are going to be like, well, Gmail does this. I want to be able to like filter my mail as it comes in. So, maybe you should have just built some sort of Gmail integration. Maybe you should not have tried to build an inbox. So, adding like a CRM, people are like, Salesforce? Salesforce does this and this. Could you guys add that? Like, you guys could do that, right? Yes, sure. And even as you add these things on, sorry, I hit my mic. Deleting things takes a lot of effort as well, and like it could also make it really difficult to develop new features because you have like things in the way, or there's like this weird dependency because this thing here, it needs to keep running, but you really want to delete it because it's serving these like 3 customers, and if you deleted it, it'd be so much easier to build this thing here. This is just something you need to balance. So like try not to get overboard with the features. And similar to feature files, another thing is the curse of a large application. I mentioned earlier, like it makes adding new features way more complicated. It increases implementation time. You end up doing like a lot of refactoring from time to time to like clean things up. This could be the result of just time, growing over time, like just being around for a while, getting into feature matrix battles, having no product vision and like changing things constantly. Or even a massive pivot, like, because sometimes you'll do a pivot. I mean, we experienced this. We used to do tons of volunteering stuff, and then we pivoted to do fundraising, and it just worked better. But we have all these volunteering features that customers still use here and there. We have an application. We have an iOS app dedicated to it, and we don't really support it anymore, but it's still there, and it's a representation of us. So it's just like our responsibility to do something with that. You end up just being trapped in your own history after a while. So like it's good like as you grow to make those decisions and spend time like hacking like the unnecessary parts away. All right, so curse of the large application. And then it's just the curse of your own arrogance. Like, so I've definitely thought I knew what the best decision was many times. And I thought I knew more than the customers. And it was not always the case. I mean, sometimes it is the case. Sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I talked to these 30 people. I'm cool, like we could just roll with this. But it's not always the case. Like you can really, if you're too into yourself, you could definitely make some huge mistakes if you're not listening to all your users. And it goes back to that slide about listening and constantly reevaluating yourself. And another part of like the curse of your own arrogance is just thinking it's all about the product. Like there's so much more than the product in what you're offering to your customers. Like what they're experiencing isn't just your sweet software and like all this time you're pouring into it. It's the customer support that they get. It's the sales process. It's your emails. It's your support. It's all your documentation, like your branding, marketing, all the little things you provide them, all those touch points, even your social media presences are what makes a great product and what makes a great company. And so like you can't get so obsessed with it that it's just the product because it's so much more than that. So like that's just, it's good to build the entire team, at the same time. And then just kind of putting it all together, like when you look at work, like you got to really think about, does this fit in my product vision or the company's product vision? That was selfish to say that way. What kind of effort does it take? How many people will this affect? Who's asking for it? Like, are they just a cranky customer? Is it all the customers? Is it somebody that you don't even want as a client? Or is it your perfect customer? What does it open up? Like, if you work on this now, like, what bits of work can you throw on in the mix? Can we maintain it and improve upon it over time? Or are we just going to build it out and walk away from it? And obviously, just keep listening and keep asking why over and over. And so I have contact information here. I put my my personal email there. I got to get a different personal email though. Like I don't just do photo stuff, but like it's really hard. Like I want to do like a hyphen or like an underscore, but like nobody's gonna get that. Like a J.Rogan. I don't know. Somebody's got J Rogan already, but all right. Questions. Steve.
How have you thought about killing features? Because I found that, like, from the customer side, like, when something disappears, like, you kill part of that. Even if it was a feature they used once, it's that sunsetting a feature without, I mean, it's one thing to sunset a customer entirely.
Yeah.
But it'd say, we're killing off, like, your iOS app might be too big, but something within that, like, losing a feature and not having that outcry that comes out, whether that, like, how much that pain truly exists for them, like, how have you dealt with mixing something?
It depends. So, I mean, we'll like, maybe we're at like a little like SQL query to watch like how often, like how many, like, so inbox is a good thing. We built this inbox and I remember working on it very early. I have no idea why, because I don't know. It was a terrible undertaking, and we kept it around for a while, and it just asked for more and more. More and more people were like, oh, I want like proper message threading. I want attachments. I want multiple recipients. I want to be able to tag these things. I want to be able to create folders. And you're like, we're not rebuilding like Gmail here. We're not doing this. So eventually, like it just kind of fell by the wayside, and we actually slowly stripped parts away from it and like made it simpler and simpler. And then we ripped it away so that like it was just a way to send an email to somebody eventually, but there was no record of it, and it didn't like really insinuate that there would be a record. So you can just like kind of send emails to one another. And then we just got to the point where we're like, well, no one's we just wrote some queries and like looked at how often it was being used and what customers were using it. And with that one, we just hacked it out one day and never heard anything. We never heard anything about that. Like that sometimes we will talk and like be a little bit more dramatic and upfront with the people, or like, you know, if there is a feature that's happening that some people want. Sometimes we'll get like the most users, the people that are using it the most, and just kind of have like a discussion with them and try to get at what they're doing, and maybe try to help them out as much as possible. Like even move them to an external product. Like, you know, hey, you could use the rest of this, but use this survey thing, or use, you know, this little like add-on, because it does this, what you're trying to do in our product super well, and that's all it does. So do this, and none of the rest of what you're doing incorporates with the rest of our product. So it's tough though. The iOS app is kind of on the, like I've been like wanting to just hack at that thing. It's on my like checklist of things to do. So yeah, I want to get around to doing that at some point. I got that one. I'm going to look at. I've been looking at downloads and seeing how many people are using it and how many crashes there are and whatnot. But it's getting to the points where it's like really crashy and not pleasant to use. So, John, you had a question first, and then Jared.
Just something I've experienced is that like when you're sort of going through the process of getting like feedback from customers, you end up getting like, or you might end up getting like a bias towards like the most recent thing you've heard, or possibly the loudest customer or
Sure.
user. I guess like what would be your advice on like sort of figuring, you know, like you're trying to figure out what the best thing to work on is, and you might have this pile of feedback, and how do you like parse out like what is actually needed versus what's actually just needed for like one really loud person or something like that, you know?
Sure, and that's difficult. That's difficult because it depends like what part of our product they're using and like what level of customer they are to us. If we were just talking about all customers that are using our SaaS platform, you know, ideally like you're looking for multiple people that are saying the same thing and over again, but occasionally like that really loud person might like dig up this thing that fits into the high value large amount of effort work, the upper left quadrant. They might be the ones that like you're like, I can't. They're using the product, they're going nuts because we don't have this feature, but a lot of other people ask for this feature, so let's move forward with this. But maybe, you know, in the opposite case, it could be something really difficult that nobody's asking for, and they're just yelling about it. So in that case, you just have to manage them in some way. Like it depends on your relationship with them. If they're on chat support, there are many ways to deflect them. If they're a potential like high-level customer and they're like emailing you, that's a little different and a little more delicate. So, so yeah, it's hard. It's just about like synthesizing the information and like having some record of it, or just having a good understanding of like everything that's being worked on. And I don't know like a good way to like bring people up to speed on that. Like if we were bringing in a ton of product people to work on things, like to really track all that, I know there's some processes being put in place now to help. Like our customer success team does an amazing job of like tagging the intercom requests, so you could see like what people are asking for, and you could review them like once a month to see like so many people are asking for this, so many people are asking for that, and everything's filtered sort of by the most asked for features, and you could understand what they relate to. And that's a good place to go sometimes when you're taking on a chunk of work and you want to just tack on a few other things that might deliver value to your customers. That's a good way to do it, to have like, you know, someone that's on support fielding questions and just tagging things and just having like a repository of that information. Jared was first.
You mentioned providing data to
Mm-hmm.
people doing prioritization, but what are some of the other important ways that programmers can provide feedback to this process?
I mean, just opinion, like it's not only data, I'm just having discussions and like, I don't want to say opinions, but just if there's something that needs to be done, like a big refactoring or, you know, an improvement that should be made that maybe people are asking for, or there's something going on where your support team is doing this thing where your engineering team has to constantly intervene to help for customers out, and it's taking up like a bunch of your time, like that's something that you should talk to somebody that's involved with prioritization and be like, hey, this is like taking up like 4 or 8 hours of our week. This is taking like 8 hours of my week each week, and I'm changing these things in the database through like terminal, and it's a pain in the ass. And you know, I could build this like UI in like an afternoon, basically in a day. And the amount it takes me for 1 week to deal with this problem, if I spent that in 1 week, I could like solve this problem by building like a little drop-down thing or whatnot, so that the support team could handle this themselves. So it's just about like having that open. I feel like we do a really good job at GiveGab of communicating. So to just have like the engineers like be very empowered and have discussions constantly about like what's important and what should be worked on, like beyond just what delivers value to a customer, like what should just be worked on as a whole, what can make the app better, what can make the app more stable, what can reduce like internal costs of doing things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So one thing I noticed, having switched from, after 2 decades of programming, spent another decade kind of on the other side of the table as a user, is that the companies behind the software think so much in terms of features that they'll come out with a new feature or two every year, and my pain points that I suffer from every day tend to stay there, and stay there, and stay there. Because I think there's all these little details that are basically invisible to the developers. And you'd have to go out there and look over someone's shoulder to realize that, you know, they have this pain point. Oh, they're having to dismiss this dialog box 16 times a day. Why isn't that just sticky, you know? But maybe it doesn't rise to the level of a tech support call. It's just annoying, you know what I mean? So I think a lot of software companies could benefit from spending more time in the field, looking over people's shoulders and seeing, oh, you know, they shouldn't have to, you know, whatever, re-log in 5 times a day or whatever it is.
Sure, yeah. I mean, any kind of clunky maneuvers or anything that's like, yeah, just throwing more and more features on it is not like the solution. There are like, that's one of those, that might be a thing in the upper right-hand quadrant that's like super like easy to accomplish and provides value to all of your customers. Like if like adding bulk delete to something versus like having somebody like click delete yes over and over again, like to kind of notice that. I mean, it is nice that we have chat support, so stuff like that can rise to the surface. And we do have a lot of people that communicate very closely with nonprofits. I think one of my downfalls is I don't really use the software as I should. Like I'm not a nonprofit administrator, so I'm not going through the day-to-day activities using the software. So I need to like find another way to empathize with them or have different discussions. So if it was software that I used on a day-to-day basis, it'd be much different and it would probably be built a lot differently.
Which is why development tools tend to be awesome.
Yeah, exactly. I'm constantly thinking about building like something for developers, and I'm like, yeah, I just want this. I know exactly how this should function. Yeah, that's a challenge though, and I'm trying to think of some of the. I mean, we definitely get things through our chat support where people get frustrated by a task, and they'll like it's so easy to just like write something in and just like caps lock, like I hate this, and just like go on a tirade. I'm sure there are other things we could do. There's a thing I was talking about Full Story, which basically it watches your users and it tracks various things like JavaScript errors and dead clicks. If somebody's clicking on something that's like not a button, but they think it's a button. But it also tracks this thing called rage clicks. And so if like anytime somebody's like tapping on something like over and over again, so you could like filter your traffic by rage clicks and just watch people rage clicking things on your site. So that's a good way to like get out there and see like where somebody might run into it. Unfortunately, our date pickers are the main things that get rage clicked because we have like these arrows. So I would really like to do away with that at some point. But yeah, so that's a way of doing it. It's hard though unless you like you said, you get out in the field and you're watching somebody struggle with your product. But there's really no real replacement for that. It's just watching somebody go through it and make mistakes. Yep.
So you're talking about bloated applications. We've got one that's almost 20 years old. It's got bloat. What should we have done differently? In general advice, like trimming features, some of those things obviously make a lot of sense, but it's like more strategic ways of trying to avoid bloat in how you develop.
Let me think this through for a brief moment because I'm trying to. So starting from the beginning, I would say just kind of constantly like evaluating what's available and what like technologies are available as you grow, and don't get like so set in one particular technology. I don't know, it's really hard though to say that if you've, especially when you're talking about applications. I feel like things are a little bit more flexible now with like different sort of cloud solutions, but when you're building like things that are like really reliant on servers and like old infrastructure, it's really hard to move away from that. We recently purchased a company, and their software is, it's running in, we're doing like server consolidation to get it under control, and it's difficult to make like changes with it, but we are like making strides, and like the team members that work on it are like making strides to make it more modern and cut out some old things. I don't know if I have a good answer for that. I mean, I might not be the person to talk to about that, just from like, Jesse, do you have advice on this?
Just like from the developer's perspective, it's such a huge difference whether or not the developers themselves care enough to keep it in shape as time goes on. Because if they care, they will raise those points with other people and keep the communication open, and things that are invisible to customers and a lot of people at the company itself are just going to slide by, and the code just gets gross.
I was thinking about, when Jared asked his question, I was thinking about like, what you raise all the time about, Jesse is our lead engineer, and he's constantly like raising issues that need to be taken on. So we kind of have a DevOps like tracker, and we have a way of just kind of putting work in there to to keep things up and to constantly update things. But I don't know, I'm not sure like if I just started like as a product person for an application that's been around for 10 years or 20 years, I'm not sure how I would approach it.
From scratch, right?
What's it?
I mean, have a perfect roadmap and don't build any features that no one's going to use.
Yeah, that would be amazing right there. Yeah, sometimes it'd be really interesting to just rebuild everything. Maybe you should just reset every once in a while.
You can rebuild, you can start from scratch. And there's, I remember talking to somebody from IBM once who said that they rewrote every chunk of code that was older than 3 years. That was their rule. Rewriting every 3 years. What's that?
Refactoring every 3 years.
Rewriting.
Huh.
Throw it out at the start and replace that module with something new. That was shocking to me, but I think about it a lot. I think, and that is the only way you can really get rid of 20 years worth of product. Maybe it's a new product.
Right.
Yeah.
It solves new problems.
I think it might depend on like your team size, and then also like what you're currently delivering. Is it a product that's like kind of in place and you're maintaining it? Because then maybe you have the chance to rewrite parts of it and like move certain parts of it over time if you have enough resources, and you're not like, you don't have a bunch of fixed deliverables that absolutely have to be done at a certain time. That might be like a way of approaching that, but it would have to be like, obviously like there'd have to be a product vision to that as well. Like what can we move, what's the most effective thing to move over first and whatnot, and it's just like,
Well, and you have to have the budget for that and
yeah.
to do that, right?
I think it might be really hard to justify in some cases.
Justify internal improvements on a product you're just maintaining.
Yeah, that. Jesse, you had a question?
Yeah, something sort of related to the bias that John mentioned, is when you do add a new feature, it's really easy to think that's like the thing we need to focus on a lot. Like, oh, everyone needs to know about this. We're going to add links to it everywhere and put it in our main navigation. When really in the scope of your full product, that's a really minor feature. You just need to do it. Sort of creep in there and distract you from other things that matter.
Yeah, sometimes you just try to force people to use it, and
Or if it's a paid feature, we're going to have some upsells everywhere.
I don't know.
People use it.
that's, yeah, it's easy to get like really excited about something you just built and you want to see people use it and make sure it's in front of them, but like you can't just hijack your entire UI with it, like flashing buttons. Other questions? Awesome. Thank you. Great. I feel like I need a beer.